Hey crafty friends, it's Chelsea, and today's video I'm going to be showing you a fun layout with this Crew collection. This is actually close to my heart, Halloween collection from last year. I didn't get a chance to use it last year, so I'm pulling out my photos from last Halloween, and I'm going to be using some of these really cute stickers. The papers are super sweet. I love the colors, definitely a little bit different. And of course, since I have a little girl, the pink is awesome. I love this star pattern. And this one is really fun. I think I'm gonna cut it apart and use some of those little word strips and a good plaid. Spiders, not such a big fan, but they're very Halloween-y. The paper pack and sticker sheet, as well as the coordinating little ghost sequins, and there is a stamp set as well, are all still on the website, so I will link those down in the description box for you. Now I'm going to be showing you something new that I've just recently really got into, and that is hand stitching on layouts. So this was one of the first projects I've done as a layout project with hand stitching. I used the B5200. These are all DMC flosses. You could use just regular white. This is just what was in stock when I was shopping for floss. 722, which is a pretty good match for the nectarine color. It's a little bit off, but it's pretty close. 151, which is a good match for ballerina, and then 3607, which is a good match for the wild berry color. And those are the flosses that I stitched with. Now here is my stitching. I did it off camera because this is a big project, right? Hand stitching takes a long time. I did a half web over here and then a full web over here. And I did put my photo mats on first so that I could save myself some time rather than wasting all that thread and all that time. I figured out where my photos were going first so that I could just stitch around them. This is actually a cut file from the Close to My Heart Complete Creativity collection, and then I turned it into a guide to help me stitch. I'm not going to show that in today's video. I'm actually sharing that over in the Creative Design Team membership. So if you're in that community or you want to join that community, you'll find all the information about how I did this over there. We are closed right now for new members, but the wait list is down in the description box because we will be opening in a little while here. So if you want to get on the wait list so that you're notified when we're opening, you can do that. So you can see here, I have just done the half web, and I used just a back stitch for the in-between ones, and then I did this chain stitch over top for the kind of the straight pieces and the border on the page for the web. I learned how to stitch by watching Paige Evans, so I will link one of her videos below where she shows these two specific stitches if you want the like kind of step-by-step close-up view of how to do these stitches. Okay, so let's jump into the creating part, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to use the paper collection to finish this all off. Okay, I've brought in my Versa mats here. I love using these to help me line up, especially double page spreads, and just to measure everything. I find that really convenient. Okay, now here are my pages. There's going to be a very thin border of black around the edge, and I know it's hard to see on the Versa mat, but there you can see just a nice thin black border. And I'm going to use my regular tape gun on this part, but then I think I'm going to use some like score tape, some extra strong tape over top of this part. I could use liquid adhesive as well, but I don't want to get any warping from the liquid adhesive, so I think I'm just going to stick to tape and tape that up so that I don't need to worry about all this kind of texture pulling up, because there is. You can see there's a bit of texture there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and just center these pieces in the middle of my 12 by 12 black cardstock. All right, now comes the photos. I cut a piece of that star paper, and my photo is 4 by 6, so I just went a 1/4 inch bigger on that one. And then I also did the orange plaid one. I'm not going to bother taking off these placeholders that I had here because they're just going to get covered up anyways. So I'm just going to leave them there. Now this one I did leave larger on this side because I was thinking about border punching it or using a die and just kind of having a nice, maybe a scallop edge or something on there. And then doing the same thing over here. So I have three 3x4 photos, and then I would do it that side and then have the scallop edge on each of those. And then I cut a couple of mats for this one to put that one right in the middle. Now the question is going to be how high to go. I don't want to cover up too much of my stitching, but I might want to do some embellishing up here, so I need to leave room for that. I grabbed a piece of wax paper because I want to use this banner, I think, on here, but I just don't want to stick it down and commit to a place before I figure out if that's where I want it. So I thought if I put on the wax paper, then I can see through it and just kind of try it out and see how low my photos would have to be to make this work. If I tilt it like on an angle, or do I want it over on this side? So I'm just gonna rip this a little bit smaller. And since you could use clear plastic for this too, but I thought wax paper would work good because then it's on the waxy side and it'll just peel right off. And let's see. It's on wax paper, so I have time to like decide where I want it and move it around. I have this die set. This is the decorative borders. It is a retired set, but I liked this scalloped with the stitching. And I thought, hey, stitching goes right along with all my hand stitching that I did on here. Now, if you guys are wondering when in the heck do I have time to do all of that stitching? Well, I found it is a really good pastime when I'm waiting for my daughter to have a snack or, you know, if we're watching TV. It's nice to have something to keep my hands busy that doesn't really require too much thinking. Even for like coloring or something, I find I have to focus too much on it. And stitching, I can just, once I figure out what colors I'm doing and, you know, I have the pattern all ready to go, then I can just go to town and I don't have to pay too much attention. I can sit there and have a conversation with my daughter while I'm stitching. Okay, so I die cut this edge and I have it just on washi tape. I'm gonna grab my photo here, just try it out. Oh yeah, I like that. That's really nice and sweet and just adds a little bit of detail. Now I'm thinking, these are all the same size. Technically, I should be able to line this one up with the one below it. Maybe I'll washi tape them together and then just run it through. Again, without removing it from the top one. Hopefully that should work. All right, that worked fantastic. There we go. Get that. And then this one is gonna go under here. And this one under here. Oh yeah, that worked out great. So I use this buildable tags thin cut set. It has the little ones and the larger size tags. So I cut myself some little ones. This one has a square top, that one has the rounded top. And then I also did some reinforcers with black glitter paper. This one doesn't exactly fit the little one, but it should work close enough. And then I did a big one out of that pattern and a little one, another little one out of the wild berry. So these little reinforcers will just get stuck on like that. And now I have to kind of figure out what I want to do over here. My biggest debate with this layout design is, should I put the banner on the right or the left? And I think it probably could have looked good on either side. I just couldn't decide. I kept moving things back and forth. And I just kind of moved things around for a while and tried to decide what I liked better. I'm just gonna let that sit there for a minute and go on over to the left page and tuck in those tags because I know I want those tucked under there with the big one on the right and the small one on the left. And now I'm like, okay, we'll go back to the other side. adjust everything around and see if that works for me. Now I have this title, and this was from the same Cricut collection, just on a different layout. I cut it out of black glitter paper, and the background is out of ballerina cardstock. This was actually attached to a photo mat, so I used the slice feature in Design Space to just slice that off. That's why the O looks kind of flat and weird. But I figured I can just tuck it behind this photo mat and nobody's gonna know the difference. I cut a strip of this pattern paper because I didn't want my photos just kind of floating out there in the middle of the page. I wanted something to ground them. So I'm adding a couple pieces of paper, a zip strip. I knew I wanted to use this one on the right-hand page to cover up where the stitching ends. So I figure I'll use the same one on the other page just to tie it all together. I'm really trying to find a balance on these pages with having, some pattern paper, but also not hiding too much of the stitching or making things too busy. So I decided I was going to pull out my black ink, and any black ink would work for this, but I want to ink the edges. I started out just of like my tags. These white ones were really blending into the background. They really weren't showing up great. So then I started doing the other tags, and pretty much I decided, you know what, I'm going to do all my papers. So everything ended up getting a very small border of black. Like I kept it very close to the edge. I did not bring it in or try and distress it very much. I was really trying to just hit the edges and define all the paper edges. I really love using white cardstock as the basis for my layouts a lot of times, especially with stitching projects. If I'm not sure what the final layout is going to look like, white is nice and neutral, but I was having the problem of this pattern paper just not showing up great. So ink was the perfect solution to that problem. I've gone ahead off camera and just glued all the little reinforcers onto the top of my tags. And now I'm taking some Wildberry stitched ribbon. This is actually, Wildberry was the color of the year last year, and it has been discontinued. So I will make sure to link any of the Wildberry things that are still available down the description box. Last time I looked, this ribbon was still available. But I am taking some inspiration from my friend Erin. This is how she usually ties her tags, and I love it. So I thought I'd give that a try, just using some black baker's twine to tie a little bow around that ribbon. I left the ends super long, both on the stitched ribbon and on the twine. And I'll trim those off once they're on my page and I can see how long I want them to be. Here I'm just using the twine by itself because the holes on these round ones are quite a bit smaller. So I'm just tying a regular bow, leaving some long ends so that I can trim that up later. If you struggle with bows, just remember the key to a great bow is just fussing with it. Lots of pulling the ends and working with the loops, and eventually you get there. I'm putting down this little branding strip to cover up the edge of my stitching. I didn't cut it to the right length, so I'm just going in with my scissors and just cutting off that little bit of extra. And now I'm just gonna put all my pieces back into place now that they've all been inked and stuck together, and just kind of line everything up. I've kind of settled on that I like the tags on the right and the banner on the left, so that is how it's gonna end up being. And don't worry, I'm gonna trim the tails on those bows because they're crazy long right now. I just really like the option of having long tails so that I can trim it to the right size once it's on the page, and just kind of see how everything's laying together and how much empty space I have. I didn't want that stitch ribbon going all the way to the top, so definitely had to cut that down. I felt like there's just a little something missing around those tags, so what did I do? Brought in a splatter stamp. Gotta add that splatter. And at this point, I definitely thought it'd be safer to stamp it than try and splatter like a liquid. This background element set has a lot of good images on it. I'm gonna use the ballerina ink because I wanted this to be subtle. I thought if I go for something dark, it's gonna be too much and kind of overpower everything. I just wanted something subtle that would add a little bit of texture, fill in a little bit of that white space without taking too much tension away. I also didn't want to end up stamping it around where I have my stitching and accidentally getting a dark color ink on top of my stitching. I cut a couple of those word strips from the pattern paper and I'm just tucking them in above that zip strip. I wanted a little bit more of the light pink on the page, and I just thought it would help that zip strip be a little bit more substantial in there. So I just tucked those in on the end, and now I'm going to stick down my tags. Typically on my layouts, I do a lot of straight lines, grids. Most of my photos are usually fairly straight. And I thought for this one, since I have the round elements in the spider webs, I'm going to do everything just a little bit whimsical. Add a little bit of tilt to everything. So my photos, the tags, everything's a little bit more whimsical than normal. You can see here I use 2 different kinds of adhesive on my photos, and that is because they are overlapping that stitching. I know it's hard to tell when you're looking like top down at it, but that stitching actually adds quite a bit of texture. So I use some score tape on the bottom half of my photos, and then I used regular adhesive on the top. And that middle photo mat is popped up on foam tape as well. I did add in more splatters behind where this banner's going. And that banner surprisingly stuck to that wax paper more than I thought it was going to. So good to know for the future. Don't leave stuff on wax paper for a really long time. So anyways, I got it off and that was all good. And now I wanted to add a little bit more embellishment. Felt like I needed something on that bottom. It was so top heavy with embellishment, but I didn't want to add a ton. So I just added a couple little pumpkins. That one pumpkin is popped up, and I will come back to this later and just add one more little thing. Now on the left page there, I'm adding some more splatter stamping, trying hard to avoid the white thread. That light pink doesn't show on the other colors, but it does show on the white, so I tried really hard to avoid it. I'm just adhering all these pieces down on the left hand page here and adding a little bit more splatter stamping in the bottom corner and just kind of tucking everything in where I want it to be and getting the last few things stuck down into place. I'm using my Tombow glue on my title. I like how this gives me a little bit of time to kind of slide it around into place and a little bit of wiggle room just so I can get it in the right spot before I push it down. And then I held it for a few seconds to make sure it tacked up and didn't pop off of all that thread. I'm really glad that I left those photo placeholders underneath my photos because it really helped when it came to lining up all these pieces. Even putting the tags in, it really helped to have those there. I thought there should be some more wildberry on this layout, so I toyed with putting that tag there, but it was just too much. So I'm using a little white stitched rectangle for my journaling, and then I decided to use one of the wildberry pumpkins from the sticker sheet to add in that little bit of wildberry to make it feel more balanced. I wanted to have wildberry spread evenly throughout the layout. Adding a couple more word strips from that pattern paper up by my photo there. I felt like it needed something beside the tag to kind of tie it all together and fill it in. And then I added a little spiderweb sticker and just putting my journaling down into place. And then attaching that pumpkin with pop dots. And I think there's just one more touch that we need here, and that is some dots. Love that these dots, 1, are not very dimensional. And 2, I love that you get 3 different shades of pink, and then you get different shapes as well. So dots and stars and hearts. And there is packs with all different kinds of colors. So there's like shades of blue, shades of red, green, all the different colors. And it just makes it really easy to find something that matches your project. I felt like I had a hole there and I almost went with that boo, but then there was this little word strip that said my boo and I just couldn't help myself. I had to put that one on there. I think either one would have worked, but I like that this one was a little bit smaller and it didn't draw so much attention. I usually like to add my little embellishments in groups of 2s or 3s. And you can see a close-up look here at all the little details. I love how these pages came together, lots of texture, and I got to scrapbook these super cute photos. I don't have a huge story. I just had my daughter on our front porch and did a little photo shoot in her costume, but it was so much fun to create. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you would like to see more scrapbooking videos from me, you can check them out on the screen right now. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.